part of a team, a committee that we put together for KC Imagine to address a growing phenomenon in digital media. And some people love the direction this is going, some people are a little wary about it, but essentially it's about certification. I'm going to let the panel describe that in a minute, but you will find that what's happening with universities, with trade learning organizations and others, certification is a really growing way to prepare people for their vocations. So you're going to hear a lot about that today. I will, before we introduce the panelists, I will share with you the ideas of some of the panel slides I was going to show you. I want to talk about middle income. So middle jobs are defined as jobs that are kind of good paying salary jobs. They're not like for a high school graduate right out of school and you jump into it and you get this job. You usually get a little training. It might be a 2-year degree at a junior college, community college. It might be a certification program, but you're not pursuing a 4-year degree. Although you could have college graduates taking certification courses to expand the range of their skills. We'll get into that as we talk. But middle wages, middle jobs are very significant. There are 25 million jobs for that category of workers. And in Missouri, 53% of jobs qualify as middle jobs. In Kansas, 54% qualify as middle jobs. And 84% of white-collar employers say they are open to hiring people with those middle job categories with not necessarily a 4-year degree. I was shocked as a 32-year Hallmark employee who saw that you had to have a good portfolio, you had to have a 4-year degree. A conversation with a recruiter at Hallmark last year, they said, well, we're not so concerned about the 4-year degree anymore. So there's an interesting trend happening. Like I say, some love it, some don't. There's some concerns in some academic institutions about is this going to affect enrollments and so forth. So there's a lot at stake with this topic. And we've got the right people here to talk about it, not just up here, but also I see some faces in this room that have something to add to this conversation. So let's start by meeting our panelists. And we'll just go from left to right. Normally I'd have a slide to show a nice picture of them and their title, but I'll just let them, in real life, introduce themselves, the position, and why certification is of interest to them. So
yeah, I guess I'll take it away. I'm Elisa Morse. I am the network coordinator for the CAPS network. We are a consortium of schools across the country, actually globally. We have 4 countries participating in the CAPS network program now. And essentially at our core, we are a support system that helps K through 12 education figure out how to bring professional skills and professional experience into K through 12 education. And so if you've been out and about within Kansas City, you've probably seen quite a few of our students. We've got at least 18 of them here today, if not more. So please make sure you meet them. But our goal is to allow students to explore their passion, find their purpose, and have kind of a clearer pathway to what they want to do with their lives. And I'm here kind of in a capacity talking about certifications in terms of what high schoolers might be looking at and some of the benefits that they have, not only getting certifications, but maybe to you as employers.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jake Akehurst. Ron, thanks for the invite. Appreciate it. I'm the executive director of UMKC Talent Link, which is a program at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, 5 minutes away from here. So right in your backyard here. I've worked about 20 years in higher education, both community college and university organizations, and a lot of that is providing professional development, continuing education training programs for these middle skill type of jobs is really where a lot of that has been over the years. So talked a lot about certifications over my time in higher ed, and seen kind of different iterations of that, and feel like this is a subject area that is near and dear to me and what I do day in and day out. So it'll be interesting to see what you all have to share with me, and I always learn from you doing these panels as well. So thanks for being here.
Hi everyone, my name is Catherine Maloney. My role is the VP of Workforce Development at Goodwill of Western Missouri and Eastern Kansas. I also oversee our Goodwill Artemis Institute, which is a specifically dedicated adult learning resource that's available for folks that are generally underrepresented in the workforce, that maybe haven't had the opportunity, privilege to go through traditional higher education. And so we offer short-term certificate programs for people to get straight into employment at higher wage than maybe what they're currently earning or what they have the potential to earn. And so I have a high level of passion for this because, part of the work that we're doing is also around DEI efforts and making sure that people are represented in the workforce and in middle skill jobs and above, especially for those that don't have economic pathways to formal higher education.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Beth McCarthy. I am the Director of Community and Industry Partnerships for Prep KC. We are an education intermediary. We support Kansas City school districts and charter schools that serve primarily students of color and students impacted by poverty, largely first-generation college goers, really helping every single student who graduates from high school really have an understanding of what is the world of careers, how do you access that world of careers. Certifications is a big focus of ours. How do we identify what are the kinds of certifications that employers value and how do we integrate those into the high school day? Because many of our students, they don't have the luxury of going to a four-year degree. They really are trying to figure out what's the quickest way that I can make money and help support my family. So we're always trying to sort of understand how do we help students understand that path as a stair step to maybe a 2 or 4 year degree, but how do they get into the workforce as quickly as possible?
Thank you, panel. So these people know what they're talking about. They have great, deep experience in this world, and I think we got a great discussion ahead. So let's start with definition of a couple of terms. I want the panel to respond to these three terms: certificate, certification, and credentials. And I want to start with the person who explained to me the difference between a certificate and certification. Jake, I'll let you take that one.
He's baited me. I think there's a lot of discussion right now around alternative credentials, and you'll hear that terminology a lot. And I sort of think of alternative credentials as the top umbrella term, and people might argue with me on that, but I kind of view that as a top level term. And then below that is badges, micro credentials. You'll hear all these other terminologies: certificates, certifications. We did a blog post on our site about kind of tomato, potato, there's all these terms out there. So for me, it's alternative credentials is kind of a good umbrella. And then from there, a certification is really something that is typically a differentiator there, is that there's going to be some sort of assessment or exam or industry test that is really an example of this would be a project management professional. So you might take a PMP exam prep course and earn a certificate for taking that class, a certificate of completion, but then you're going to go on and take a certification exam to get that industry credential. So that's a quick example. Another one might be, a lot of these are in the cybersecurity space. So there's a whole alphabet soup of acronyms and names of these industry certifications. CompTIA, a CISSP is an example. That's a certification, but you might be taking a series of classes or certificate-based things to work toward that larger certification. So that's kind of been the easy way for me to think of it, but it can be quite confusing, and those terms are thrown around depending on the school or the university or the program that's using them. So that's my quick and dirty answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I think the thing to think about that, it recognizes if you're pursuing a certificate or certification, it's good to know, how much value there is in that credential, in terms of if you're going to an employer and they see you have a certificate and they ask you if you completed any kind of proof that you learned what you got, what you sat in that class for, then they want that certification. So let's move from there into a student perspective on certificates, and then we'll flip that after we had that discussion about how do colleges, what are the perspective around certifications from a college perspective. So I know many of you on the panel work directly with students. Both Alyssa and Beth work with high school level, right?
Correct.
And you work with both?
Adults.
So they're out of high school by the time they get to Goodwill, Artemis Institute.
Yes.
So let's hear from your perspectives. Why is certification a good thing for students? And I'll let anybody who wants to jump in.
I'm happy to start. So I think our students are always looking for those short-term opportunities, because oftentimes those certifications, maybe they're 6 months, maybe they're a year, a shorter-term opportunity to gain some technical skills that employers value, that they can sort of go to say, yes, sort of, I have these skills that you need. To really figure out, is this something that I'm interested in? And maybe they do that and say, oh, that's not quite what I'm interested in. So it's a helpful way for them to gain the skills that employers say that they need, to really start down a path without committing 4 years of their life, which sometimes they're a little hesitant to do. So,
Any others to add?
I think I'd add to that the opportunity that we're seeing with high school students in certifications is that a lot of our high school curriculum only kind of scratches the surface on any one particular area or technical skill. And that's not to say that individual classes don't go really deep, because some of them really do. I'm a former technology teacher, so I'm here for that, right? But it allows specific certifications, allow students to take that introductory level work that they're doing in their course and then dig a little bit deeper. So it's also helping our students realize some voice in their education. It's allowing them to, as Beth is saying, do a little bit of that self-identification, which is pretty important to them. At 18, you kind of want to know yourself, right?
Yeah.
So Catherine, by the time they're out of high school and they come to you and they're adults and they're trying to figure out where they're going, is there anything different from what these two have offered in terms of their perspective?
Yeah, well, I would just add that I think, as an adult, in many of the short-term certification programs that we're interacting with adults with, is that they're wanting to make sure that it is employer recognized, industry recognized, and that there's some validity to, if they're going to put it on their resume and they're going to put that in front of an employer, they're going to be like, what is that? Because if that's the case, then there's maybe no credibility behind what the information is, unless that particular job seeker or student is just very versed on what the body of knowledge is, of like what were the learning objectives and the content, and to show proof that there was some sort of standard of like a comprehension test or some sort of certification exam that went along with it. And so I think part of that is making sure that there's some reference point to be like here is this body of knowledge that they could point the employer to be like, this is the place that validates that this is a credible certificate. But I think I also say that to add on that I think that there's still some value in other learning principle opportunities too that might not be an official certification, but especially with some of this emerging technology, things around robotics, AR, VR, 3D printing, that some of these like incubator spaces, maker spaces, there's still a lot of opportunities for learning that maybe aren't in a formalized industry recognized certification yet because it's so new. And so making sure that there's still, some activities that could still be represented in a way of, even if it's just a certificate of completion of going through a learning exercise, learning about, industry 4.0 careers, what those things are, that there's still some, communication that the job seeker or that individual person can then educate as they're going through the channels of trying to find a job on what do they now know and what are the skill sets that they've gained, even if it doesn't result in an official, certification, industry recognized certificate.
And yet I do think that's a really important point, and a key thing that a convener like KC Imagine can do in pulling together employers to say, what are the certifications we value? So then education knows, here's what we should focus on, because that's always a struggle when there's not sort of agreement across lots of different sort of industry partners to say, here's what we most value. Then education struggles to know, okay, so how do we meet the needs of employers? And there's a big disconnect between industry recognized credentials. And what you'll find on Department of Education, sort of DESE's website, I mean, they have a huge list of certifications, some of which you'll ask employers about and they've never heard of. So you can't rely on that. You need to know what is it that's valued.
I think that speaks to Catherine's point of sometimes these things are not going to be an industry recognized thing. It might just be something that an employer in a university or an employer in a private company say, this is what is needed, and they build it. And it takes a different form, to play off Matt's comments about being fluid. Sometimes it is fluid. You can't perfectly hit it on the head every time. And so I sometimes with, our individuals that take training and through continuing ed kind of operations, sometimes they don't even necessarily think of themselves as a student. I will say to them, this is a both and. You may already have a master's degree, PhD, whatever, you're working in the field right now, but you can do both and. You can work and to do some sort of education training that is going to look good on a resume. It's going to be a way to upskill yourself. I mean, any of us in this room have to learn all the time. And that sounds cliche because I'm in education, but it is absolutely the truth.
Yep.
Like, you cannot be an expert on everything. So I'll say to them, they'll almost apologize because, well, I already have a degree. And I'll say, great, fantastic. And you can take this particular training course over here to get you really immersed in that topic or this certificate. So,
well, that's something, let's spend a little more time on it, because technology is changing so rapidly, and when forms of communication and expression change with that, sometimes the skills you learn in that to get that 4-year degree aren't keeping up with what's happening around you. Any reactions, thoughts about that?
I'm at an institution of higher learning that delivers a lot of 4-year degrees, so I don't want to necessarily say that there isn't a need there. And Alan's sitting right here from K-State, and they're rolling out an awesome 4-year degree. So I have a 4-year degree and a master's degree and all those things, but I think at some point it is that both and is the best way that I've been able to distill that down for people, because you just can't possibly start a career. I look at Matt's career and I go, you're telling me Matt never took a class or learned something beyond, but he's, I'm sure, degreed, or even if he isn't, he's learned along the way. So I just try not to have that be sort of a judgmental conversation with a person who's looking at these certifications. It's like, you might want to explore a 4-year degree. I've run into a lot of people that have a lot of college credit hours. They just never finished a degree, so here's an opportunity to check both. And so. Fire away.
Yeah, well, the reason I'm kind of getting animated about this is something that I've got personal history with. So I have 8 years of degrees in filmmaking. So anybody in the room that does filmmaking knows how helpful and useless that is at the same time. So, I mean, so just like, so I'm coming from a place where I spent a lot of time in higher education. Right out of college, became a producer, went through my master's degree, and was a producer for 10 years. Then all of a sudden moved, needed to switch kind of my track, and had to start doing some private editing, and hadn't touched Premiere Pro in 10 years, right? And so I went back and got all of those certifications and did all the Adobe products and went and got some certifications and certificates to make sure that I was back in the industry where I needed to be and to be competitive. So I think even those of you who are in higher education, having a certification track, whether it's degree pursuant or not, is vital. I mean, it's such a useful tool and a useful opportunity. So I'm kind of the poster child for yes, please do that. Right?
Jeff, did you have a question?
Yeah, it seems like what a shorter way of what you guys are saying is that everybody needs to become a lifetime learner.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, I think we're at an interesting point in time that information is just always at our fingertips. It doesn't even always have to be formal education in any way. If you want to learn how to code, you can just Google, how do I learn this coding language, and go learn it. And oftentimes we hear from employers, that's actually what they're looking for, that a student really has the ability to seek out the resources that they want, to teach themselves, to learn it, and then show, here's what I did with that knowledge. So here's the website I created. Here's the action I took with it. And so it doesn't always even need to be formalized. So I think there's so many different ways to gain the knowledge that you need.
Yes.
Well, along the same lines, of your situation with going back, when I taught construction management at Johnson County for a year, and we always try to get our students, our degrees, great, obviously, but, get certifications and, the concrete technician, lead, different things like that. But a big obstacle we had with the students was the cost of the certifications, to take the exams and to take the course. And we were trying to work with the college with some of the foundation money, but there were just roadblocks every step of the way. Because for students, $200 for a certification exam is big money. What can we do about that? How can we help? Have you run into that too? And how do we help students with that?
Yes, and so I think there is exciting progress from Kauffman Foundation and Casey Scholars, right? So they used to focus just on 4-year degrees. They have a new track for credentials that are high need, high wage. So what are the things that the Kansas City area needs? And I can't remember how many students they're recruiting for their first year. Maybe it's 100, but it's a program they anticipate growing, because that's a huge gap, right?
Yeah.
Employers say we desperately need this. Students want to do it, but even $200 is a huge obstacle for a lot of students. So yes, I think there are people trying to figure that out, and beyond Casey Scholars, but that's the one I'm most familiar with.
Right, and I think, just to add as a supplement, there is going to be more funds, an influx from Kauffman to help support that, but there are also other nonprofit partners that have grant funds available. And so I think, part of it is just like trying to bring our the collaboration amongst partners together, because in many cases, the students are over here trying to navigate through what can they afford, what can they not afford, and then there's other partners over here that have funding and are looking for the students that need to, so I think it's us communicating and connecting together to make sure that the funding is getting to the students who are needing the support.
Coalitions, like
Yeah.
we talked about in the one chat group up there.
Well, it's the collaboration. We compete. We do.
Oh, yeah.
But there's also that collaboration piece that Catherine and I had an early conversation. You're probably thinking of this. She has Google certifications that they can provide free to people. I have a data analytics course. It's $500. I said, well, maybe there's a way that we could funnel people. They get the free one and then they come through ours, or vice versa, or so there are creative ways, I think, to fund students. I think the other one is there has to be some disruption in higher ed to understand that not all scholarship funds are credit based. So I was at JCC before, so they had some non-credit scholarship funding that we were starting to work on, and that's one of my thoughts too. Is just individuals don't always pursue a degree, and there's all the FAFSA dollars and government funds and financial aid. But I've had students that need to take a $500 certificate, and could we give them a $400 scholarship, and they pay $100, and it makes it very attainable for them. So I think there's some more work to be done in that kind of non-credit continuing ed training program. Kauffman's doing it. I'm definitely chatting with them. So there's those spaces of those in-between organizations that I think can provide some of that funding dot connecting for students, and it gives them some skin in the game, but they don't have to take on a $2,000 certificate if they get some funding.
But
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to say the other missing piece is industry, right? So industry has huge gaps in their future employers, that their employees that they need. And so we need them to come to the table to say, if we can sort of train this group for you, we need sort of help funding so students can get through it. So I think industry plays a critical role in this whole collaboration as well.
And those two stakeholders, we talked about students, and we briefly talked about the colleges, the universities, and businesses. Let's take a few minutes to talk about it from their perspectives on both sides of this issue. And let's start with the universities, because on the one hand, they risk losing their 4-year degree. That's a lot of money that comes through when you got a person in school for 4 years. On the other hand, certifications can provide another revenue stream. Let's explore that one for a minute. But also, let's look at the other side of that. If you're like a liberal arts instructor at a 4-year college, and I sometimes have this perspective myself, there's something those certification chasers are missing in their education. Let's hear your thoughts about that perspective, those perspectives.
I mean, I've talked a lot already about kind of the both and concept. So I do think universities, you're seeing them create some more graduate level micro credentials, like what Alan's doing on degree plans, or they're doing, like even at a community college where they're doing an associate's degree, but then they peel off maybe year one of that degree and it's a certificate, where someone's still getting credit for that 1 year and they're getting some of the liberal arts, some of the general education requirements, a little bit more well-rounded, if you will, education that way. And I am seeing some of the certification programs like what we're working on, and when we talk to employers, they say, yeah, they want a unicorn, number one, but they want someone with the technical skill, but then they always go back to the tried and true. They need to be adaptable, willing to learn, folks that have basic supervisory skills. So we're putting together shorter, quicker things like first-time supervisor training, or things that are not necessarily new, but we're trying to layer those on. Could they do this over here while they're working for you? And your point is, I will say that employers, our argument is, you should invest in this person for $1,000. Your turnover costs, hiring and retaining and training, I mean, it just... So for you to take and invest in 5 people to work through a first-time supervisor and an IT certificate doesn't even come close to what it would cost you to have to that revolving door of hiring and development that way. So it's tricky. I mean, it is definitely kind of an open space right now to have those conversations, and I think people need to be open to alternative ideas.
And I mean,
Go ahead.
A number. Amazon apparently each year is spending like $8 billion worth of churn.
Yep.
Completely unsustainable is they're going to go kill all the population.
But they have an educational support system at Amazon. They'll pay like 95% of someone's, don't quote me on that, but it's a lot. And they'll pay for an IT certification or something. But that's actually run by a third party, so they're layering on these ways to help their employees, and they know it's in their best interest because they're going to retain them. So,
and I think, I was going to say, I think, that it's maybe to think about this not as just like a one-time certification and that's going to be the end of the person's journey, and that many of these are intended to be stackable. So if there is a certification at one point in time, they would take more, and it would start to incorporate the appetite for that lifelong learning journey that people would be focused on, especially for folks that have never gone through formal higher education. You get this certification, and for some folks this might be the very first thing that they've ever accomplished, including getting their high school diploma. And so then it's thinking about, okay, I know how to be a student again as an adult, and then it's like college is achievable for me. So I think part of it is like encouraging that these milestone accomplishments that then starts the journey of like, I now know how to navigate through either tuition assistance or any FAFSA kind of applications, or getting sponsored by my employer that I'm now working, and they have like a tuition reimbursement type of program, and now they have access to the formal higher education that maybe they always wanted to but couldn't because of financial reasons. And so I don't think it's like a one route or another. I think it's like, how does if they start down this route, get reconnected back to opportunities, because I fully believe that there are still and going to continue to forever be jobs that do require the aptitude level of a 4-year like rigor, or more master's degree type of education, because you're right, it's like some of it is technical skills, but even from a liberal arts perspective, there's just something about the human-centered design of those programs that creates the brain over those years of thinking and processing and creating new ideas or writing papers, of just that critical thinking skills that are going to be required for certain degrees. And so even if a person was starting to, down a career pathway that they've been able to get maybe, I don't know, a $60,000 job, and they've never had to go to, formal higher education, I think there will be a moment in time down the road where they can't elevate to that next promotion because there isn't going to be an education requirement that they haven't been able to obtain yet.
I'd like to shift to another stakeholder. We talked a little bit about the businesses, but what is the level of receptivity to these types of alternatives to four-year degrees that you're seeing with area employers? Are you seeing a general acceptance, growing acceptance, general reluctance? What's your experience with working with employers?
I think it's rapidly changing right now, especially in the last 24 months in particular. If you even were to look back prior to the pandemic, you go through the Chamber of Commerce, you're talking with lots of industry partners, asking, like, what is the minimum threshold? And it is changing rapidly. I think partly out of desperation, maybe because of all the workforce challenges. You go to an employer and ask, even the bare minimum, do people need to have a high school diploma or any specialized skills training? And prior to pandemic, they would say yes, and here is this. And now they're like, no criteria, anyone will do. So I feel like, part of it is maybe as just a response to the economy that they're having to change, because beforehand, maybe they had a line out the door of applicants and they had a whole stack of people to choose from, and now nobody's knocking on the door. And so they're like, well, where did our pipeline of talent go? So I think they're having to change, maybe reluctantly, but nonetheless, they're having to change.
We're hearing that as well. I mean, we're hearing that employers actually are willing to pay for those certifications to get the technical skills. So one of the things that we're exploring right now is what does the certification for your traditional soft skills look like, right? We're looking at what does that human-centered design piece that if you either don't have the means to go get it in a four-year institution or aren't ready for that, and that's part of your long-term plan, what does it mean to get certified in communication, in teamwork, in management, and these project management, things like that. So, because I think a lot of employers that's what they're missing. They're missing those we don't call them soft skills at CAPS, we call them durable skills, but because soft skills is a yucky word. Durable skills, exactly. So power skills, 21st century skills, essential skills, whatever you want to call them. Those are the things that, we had this kind of joke around CAPS that those are the things that'll keep you in your job. They might not be the things that hire you, but they're the things that are going to keep you from getting fired. And those are the things that are transferable across industry. So we're actually looking at what does that certification look like, and looking to industry to help us inform what that should be. Because I think you're right. Employers are ready and willing to step up and do the technical part.
I can, when we talk to employers, we get a lot of we need people. And I'll say, okay, well, I don't have a people phone. I can't, dial up, yes. And I say, well, who do you have internally that you'd like to invest in? Is there anyone in this organization right now that you can move from A to B to C on some sort of career pathway or continuum, and how can we invest in them to do that, or you invest in them to do that? I think that is this idea of durable skills. I mean, we're working with a nonprofit right now that we're going to do that for them, a small cohort group. They're describing what they need, and I say, this is durable skills. This is communication skills, work, life skills, those kinds of things. So let's put together a little proposal for you, bring in a trainer, do that, and get these individuals into those roles where they're retained. So that's been a lot of what I've seen from employers. Sometimes I'll have an open conversation with them about, I'll say, do you reimburse people for training, or do you, what's your benefits package? And they'll say, oh, we do all kinds of things for students. And I never forget, an employer say, yeah, we give $3,000 a person. And I said, well, where did you get that number? Oh, we just 3,000 seemed like, and I said, well, is it a certain certificate? Is it a credit hour? You based it on where did you arrive at that number? Well, that seemed like a budget, what we had. And I said, okay, that's great, you're doing that, but nobody uses it. We can't get anybody to use it. And I said, well, do you let them do non-credit, or can they get a certificate? Your forklift driver in the warehouse probably doesn't want a 4-year degree, or I'm being stereotypical here, but they might get an OSHA certification for $200. So can you start to think a little more broadly about how you're applying those funds? And so if you all are employers or speaking to employers, I think that's huge. Just have that open dialogue with them about what do you actually pay for, or what do you actually reimburse? Because I think a lot of employees just don't know. They think, oh, I got to go out and pay for this. But if they went and made a
or
case,
not reimbursement, but just let the employer
pay for
pay.
it.
Yeah.
you know, that's the other one is I had a deal go through one time because the employer changed their policy. So it was like $2,000 certification per person. They yanked that out from under them and said, well, you have to be reimbursed. All those people said, I'm not going to fork over $2,000 up front and wait 10, 12 weeks to get reimbursed. It's Christmas time. I got to buy my family presents. And so I lost the training engagement because of that. And so I went back to that employer and said, you know why this didn't happen? Because you changed your policy and they don't want to upfront the costs, and I don't have a magic money tree where I can upfront the cost either, you know, so, you know, you need to think through your policies and plans. So COVID has really, to circle back to yours, has really forced employers to just rethink that space.
So I have one last question before we open it up to the audience for more questions, and we're rapidly, our time's going quickly here. The reason that we pulled this committee together, you know, you all know, I think, that our programs will be offered out of the Lafayette building near 31st and Truce. Well, one of the audiences we want to reach are the people in that neighborhood, many of whom fall in the category of who Beth works with, who don't have the means to pursue four-year degrees. And so we want to create some kind of certification program in digital media that will get them on this path to those better jobs. What do you know about the state of certification for digital media in our area? What's your sense of what's out there, what's available? Is there much? Do we need to take on that task to kind of really create something that's meaningful for employers? What's the state of digital media certification?
I think that there's still a gap. I think that, and you know, trying to like unblur the lines between digital media versus digital marketing. I think digital marketing has a strong hold. There's a lot of online, there's some local community college, and even four-year college. I think there are certifications from the marketing perspective has like a good, you could Google it and there's a ton of options. But if you're trying to dig a little bit deeper into the actual digital media piece, I feel like it's harder to come across. So I think there's still a space, you know, for creation of what that's going to look like. And I think, you know, there was a diagram that you had put together where it was like kind of breaking it down by, you know, production of digital media, or, you know, kind of getting into like a singular focus so that the audience member understands, like, where does this lead me to? Because if we start with this one certification option and I do these next 2 or 3 things, like what can I expect for what kinds of jobs would be available to them, that I think we still need to take some time to draw that out and then find where the missing pieces are. Because I think as a supplement, some of the marketing components would be a nice like add-on asset, but you know, still taking some time to dig into the other part of the creative and the creation side of the digital media piece.
As I was chime in, as I was preparing my notes for this, my first thought was terminology. You know, there's a lot. You Google digital media certificate, a bunch of digital marketing stuff comes up. So these terms are sort of get blurred in the lines between that because I guess pun intended, because of marketing, they sort of get, you know, they pass like ships in the night where it's like, wait a second, when did digital media become solely digital marketing, or vice versa? And there's gaming and animation and production. There's all these kind of, you know, so I think, you know, your example of, you know, my team, we have a Adobe certified professional in video design. Well, that's Premiere Pro with some Photoshop, and would be a real practical thing for somebody to do, but that's not digital marketing. And so thinking through, I mean, I just jotted down, there's boot camps, there's a whole swath of you know, Trilogy Education Services, General Assembly, Thrive DX. I mean, there's all these for-profit proprietary things that are coming up with these boot camp certifications. There's a lot. The Kansas City Art Institute has degrees. KSU, Alan, third plug, Alan. somebody take Alan's. You know, so another one. There's these really unique, like SIS is here, Stellar Image Studios, Jasmine and Amber. Like they do this really cool, like 9-week for women and minorities, and it's literally like a free 9-week, just absorb what they know kind of thing. So there's these really cool, fine-tuned kind of things. There's another one called Hollywood Animation Academy. And a gentleman's here too. I'm drawing a blank. Gavin. And he's doing like a 2-year, a little bit more like higher ed, but not really, so there's these cool things out there. So I think you have to be, I tell this to people when they're looking, you have to be a wise consumer. You really got to dig in and go, what are these things? How many hours are they? What's the format? All those kinds of pieces. So I'll shut up now.
Alan, would you like to talk a little bit?
Go
about
ahead.
what you're doing?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
One
I
time.
was gonna add, I think what we need is the employer voice. Where are the jobs in Kansas City? What do employers need? What value do they put on the different sort of skills certification, so that then we know, okay, this is what we should focus on, because there is so much. I can't make sense of it. I don't have a clue what to do in that space. So I need sort of direction from employers to say, here's what students need to do.
Jeff, you had something.
Well, it seems like you go like already established things. There's only, as far as I understand, in Kansas City by metropolitan area, one true video game developer company. One.
Company?
Bad Round Games, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And they were working on a project, and then they had to cancel it because it wasn't going anywhere. But now all they do is just make, not their own games, but make games for other people. So like a party,
So, Alan, did you want to say anything about what you're working on? Because that's kind of interesting in this whole.
Yeah, this has been very, very helpful for me, just listening from an education standpoint. I'm with Kansas State University. I'm program director of digital innovation programs, and over the last couple of years, we've been developing online and on-campus degree and certificate programs. Last August, we announced a new interdisciplinary degree program with the College of Business and the College of Engineering. I'm in the A.Q. Miller School of Media and Communications. It's truly interdisciplinary, fully interdisciplinary. From this, the graduate of the bachelor's program earns 4 credentials and 1 degree. They get a bachelor's degree, they get a certificate in computer science, a certificate in digital engagement, and a minor in entrepreneurship and innovation on top of all of that. That's all embedded into the program. The university's made a $200,000 investment into this program, and a part of that is a $60,000 scholarship program that we're helping to identify students in underrepresented communities to help build that population. What we've seen through this program, we've got 17 hours of computer science courses, we've got 15 hours of business courses, and we've got another 16, 17 hours of media courses. So social media strategy and management, digital brand strategy, innovations in media, going mobile, which is a mobile marketing course. We've really tried to take a total view of what we've heard from industry of what they want our students to learn. Next Tuesday, I'm here to announce a new certificate program in digital engagement. It's a 12-hour program. The cohort begins in the fall, and it includes some of the courses within the degree program, the social media course, the digital brand strategy course. There's a course called Writing in the Digital Economy, which is a content marketing course, and there's an Innovations in Media course. And so I'm really excited about what I'm hearing. I think I'm in line with what I've heard, and so I'm really glad about that. And we've partnered with the KC Tech Council. They're allowing us to embed their assessment program that they use to kind of screen folks for their apprenticeship program. So I'm looking for an enrollment to employment type program within what we're doing here. So that's much.
So we really we got 1 minute to wrap up before our other groups come in. So one last comment, anyone? Do you want to share?
I was just going to say I appreciate the integration of business and media. As a film school graduate, that to me, when we're talking about the usefulness of the 4-year degree versus certification, the insight into industry business and industry marketing and industry PR, that was the most valuable piece to me. So, because it's all fine and good to know how to run Adobe, but if you don't know how to market your own skills and talk about the industry,
Yeah, I've been yelling, my background is corporate marketing. I was at Coke and AT&T for years, so I've been yelling at my PhD counterparts. Okay, you guys are teaching these kids,
Yeah.
but they don't know anything about business, but they're advertising majors. You know, they're PR majors. They can't read a financial statement or teach them something. I'm sorry.
Well, the one I was thinking of earlier was it's one thing to convene, but then you got to act.
Yeah.
So I think that's my takeaway is like, that collaboration competition is okay, but then at some point you convene and then there's some action step, and it may not be perfect, it may not be exactly hit everything on the head, but at least you convene and then there's some action taken from these convening type sessions. So
And that's what
Sure.
Casey Imagine
Yeah.
hopes to do by
Yep.
pulling potential partners together. We either create something that we offer, or we partner with somebody who has something good, but we just want to make sure that the people we're talking